It is Black Friday, November 24, 2023. We just finished watching the very exciting, and I mean that mostly sarcastically, Dolphins-Jets game. I am flying Ryan Gilchrist along with
Tampa Motormouth Joel Verone, who you have to wonder if not for gambling and fantasy football, how many eyeballs would have been on that game.
probably just Jets and Dolphins fans and your hardcore football junkies. But we did see something in that game we've never seen before, at least that I can remember. Hail Mary pick six from
And that,
Javon Holland in the
and,
Dolphins in the first half.
and that was after the Dolphins picked Tua Tagovailoa off, but they then missed the extra point. Oops.
Yeah, Jets got a pick six. Dolphins get the ball back, turn the ball over with 2 seconds left, and apparently it was just expert strategery as the next pass is a Hail Mary that goes for a touchdown for the Miami
If you thought
Dolphins.
Zach Wilson was bad, oh, Boyle, you haven't seen anything yet.
Oh, boy. Anyways, there were 3 games yesterday, one of which was actually fairly competitive. It was kind of not that close until the very, very end, but better than the other 3.
Stud was early, and then you had 2 poop games.
So let's start with the first one is the Packers 29-22 upset win over the Detroit Lions. Packers now 5-6, just outside of the playoffs right now. Still a long way to go. Lions fall to 8-3. That puts them in a tie with 2 other teams that played on Thanksgiving after their games wrapped up. But the Packers defense early, a couple strip sack fumbles on Jared Goff, one that was returned for a touchdown. Packers were up 23-6 in this game. Lions tried to get a nice little comeback, but just couldn't get the offense going for the most part.
Have to ask, do the Packers have a realistic chance of getting into the playoffs?
Yeah, I think they do. The NFC is pretty bad. They're 5-6. Depending on what happens with Minnesota tomorrow, if Minnesota loses, they're the 7th seed. They fall to 6-5, given that they're playing Chicago on Monday night. Sorry, but if they manage to lose that game, it's only a 1-game spread. I'm pretty sure Green Bay plays Minnesota at least once, might even be twice still. So yeah, they still have a legitimate chance. And any team at this point, if you win out, you are probably going to be pushing for the playoffs. If you're not the Panthers, Patriots, and Cardinals, who are only on 2 wins on the season. Teams like the Jets are pushing their luck pretty thin as they fall to 4-7 today. But back to the Packers. Jordan Love, best game of the season. Christian Watson, best game of the season. And the Packers just look like a much better team than they have looked at really any other point this season. The Lions, one of their worst outings of the season, but at 8-3, still looks pretty good to make the playoffs. And who knows once they get in, they have a good enough team to make things happen. But a disappointing loss on Thanksgiving at home. I think it's like 14 in a row with the waxing gibbous moon.
Yeah, you know what the narrative is going to be, the anti-Lion narrative. They are not a real Super Bowl contender this year because of that game.
Jared Goff is the biggest mystery in football because some weeks he plays like an absolute god, and some weeks he plays like he did in the first half of the last 2 weeks. And he's just not that good. David Montgomery, though, and Jahmyr Gibbs still look very, very good. And Amon-Ra for the Lions is just a weapon you can't deny. Sam Laporta, his best game in a little while. I mean, this offense has enough good pieces. The defensive line couldn't get home, but that defense is much better than they looked yesterday. But the Packers are 5-6.
Nobody saw that coming, the Packers doing that to the Lions. I don't think anybody, although you know the old
it's the moon.
You know the meme with Stewie from Family Guy and from the Lions going, don't you guys have a Thanksgiving football game you need to be losing today?
Yeah. And they did. So, yeah, that is the first game on Thanksgiving. Any ups and downs from this one, Joel?
No, it was just
too much of a scramble to get those ready.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, I mean, it's just you have a week, and it's just. I mean, just the ups definitely have to be the Packers' offense. I mean, just absolutely surprising, and the defense holding off the Lions. Definite. My one down, and this is totally completely fantasy related. Aaron Jones.
Yeah, the injury was out this one. Next up, I forgot to switch the Commanders defense out for the Saints, and this one hurt.
Good job. That actually leads me into my question about the Commanders. Was trading away Chase Young the worst front office decision by the Commanders in 23?
No. They got picks back. I don't think they got enough value for it, but this is a team that's not going to make the playoffs. They lost this game to the Cowboys 45-10. It was only 20-10 at halftime. It looked like a very close competitive game, and then Dallas, well, they decided it wasn't going to be a close competitive game in the second half. But no, I don't think trading Chase Young was the big problem. The big problem is that they just don't have enough pieces on offense and on defense. Giving Chase Young away doesn't help that, but all in all, just not a full and complete team. This team lost to the Giants the week before, got stomped by the Cowboys, and the reward for this is a matchup next week with Miami. So Washington could be in for a very rough few weeks as Dallas at home has just blown. I think they've won all their games at home by 20-plus points. They've been blowing out bad teams all season long. The real test for Dallas is obviously going to come in the playoffs, and when they play teams like Philadelphia, San Francisco, Detroit, should they get to that point, because it looks like those are going to be the other division winners.
My down for this one, other than you're trying to figure out which side of the Commanders was worse. Up definitely Dallas Cowboys, Dallas DST.
Dak Prescott 4 touchdowns.
Anybody had Dallas DST in the DFS, they were probably just dancing around the room going, oh.
Yeah, Bland, NFL record 5th interception return for a touchdown in one season, breaking a very old mark there. Cowboys, 4 touchdown passes from Dak Prescott. Tony Pollard got a touchdown. Like, this is an encouraging game, even though it's against a bad opponent. It's at home when you've been blowing teams out. It's encouraging for Dallas to show up and have, Brandon Cooks get a touchdown, to get all these guys involved in one game.
Cowboys have to have bonus points for halftime of Dolly Parton.
Oh, yeah. I'm not a big Dolly Parton fan, and I don't know anything about Jack Harlow, but he was in front of a children's birthday party inflatable igloo, and she was on a grand stage, and she was actually good, and he was whatever you want to call him. Detroit did not do him any favors by any means, but Dallas definitely puts on a good show at halftime, and they usually get the more mass appeal artists, where Detroit usually gets the more niche.
We have no idea who they are, artists.
Yeah, when the announcer's like, "Oh, I was listening to Jack Harlow on the way in," I'm like, "No, you were not. Stop lying to us on national television. For a fact
that'd be the
Greg Olson. You were not listening to him on the way in.
That'd be the Simpsons soundbite. I have no idea who that is.
Yeah, and no way you were listening to him. But the Cowboys, 8-3, still in contention for that division crown. They have to beat Philadelphia.
They might be real this year. Seriously,
might be real, but we've said that before.
True.
If they have any hopes in the division, they do have to beat Philadelphia at home when they play down the line this season, and hope Philadelphia stumbles along the way. Philadelphia with a tough.
I know this is the meme cycle that everyone is starting to maybe believe before, of course, the big letdown comes.
Here's how I view the Cowboys. I view the Cowboys the same way everybody else views the Dolphins. They are pounding bad teams. Do you believe in them? Are they a good team? Yes, Miami's a good team. Dallas is a good team, but they are blowing out Carolina. They're blowing out Washington. They're blowing out the Jets, the Patriots. Like, they're beating bad teams. Again, I think the Dolphins are a good team. I think the Cowboys are a good team.
When you pair them up against the 49ers.
But when the Cowboys played the 49ers, they got smacked. When the Dolphins went and played the Bills, they got beat pretty good. I think they're both very similar teams, and they actually play towards the end of the season, so that'd be an interesting matchup as well.
The Bills are doing all that better themselves, but
I know the Bills. I just kept thinking of the Dolphins game today after everybody behind me in the Bills game was going, "The Bills are back, baby!" I'm like, at what point do I start screaming because we're beating Tim Boyle and the Jets? The Dolphins are back, baby, because we won by 21. Anyways, let's stick to Thursday's games. Go to the finale. 49ers 31-13 win of the Seattle Seahawks puts them 2 games up in the division. Seattle falls to 6-5. San Francisco 8-3. So a logjam at 8-3 with Dallas, San Francisco. Dallas right now would be the 5 seed, but still in that logjam as well. And then of course you got the Saints in the 4 seed. So I think the Dallas Cowboys could win that first playoff game no matter what.
I think with this game, the question with the Seahawks is, is what happened to the Seahawks this year. As you just look at this game, the start of the second half, 0-5 with third downs. First drive of the second half, 0-6. Pretty much a summary of their entire year. What's happened to them this year as opposed to last year when they seemed to be world beaters?
For Seattle, I just think Geno is reverting back to what he really is. He had a great season last year, but we saw him for the rest of his career where he was not that guy. And this year he looks not quite back to what he looked like with the Jets and his other teams in the past, but he definitely is not the same Geno we saw last year. I do think that some of the offensive line problems, because of course they had Jason Peters signed off the street. He got hurt in the game yesterday as well because they had so many line problems. That's not helping matters. The defense is a little less dominant than they were last year in a lot of factors. So that's the problem with Seattle. But San Francisco, you lose by 18 to San Francisco, I think you go, that is a damn good team. Deebo Samuel had a big game. Brandon Ayuk had a touchdown in a very small game.
Had the losing slump, and they have righted the ship and snapped back into form.
Yeah, Brock Purdy had a bad game because he didn't get a lot of fantasy points or a lot of stats because he didn't need to. Christian McCaffrey was an absolute monster. Surprise, surprise in that one. Niners 8-3. I know the record doesn't say this, and we're going to find out. I think the Eagles play the Niners in a couple weeks. I think the Niners are still possibly the best team in the NFC, even though the Philadelphia Eagles have a 9-1 record. They hit a snag. They hit a slump. And I just think that was all it was kind of an anomaly.
Yeah, because one thing I'm going to bring up when we talk about the Eagles game is just how lucky they've been.
I said this to my family because they look at me as like the sports guy, and they're not. And they're from Philadelphia, so they're like, oh, the Eagles are 9-1. I said, there's no special team out there this year. You know, Tampa with the Bucks when they had Tom Brady the first year, you're like, there's something here. There's something special to this team. The first year of Kansas City with Pat Mahomes emerging and breaking out. The year Cincinnati went to the Super Bowl, you're like, this is a team that's got something special going. I don't have that feeling for any team yet this year. Detroit was the closest, but they got clapped yesterday and kind of ruined that.
Yeah.
San Francisco, like I said, might be the best team in the NFC, but they had this 3-game losing streak that just proves they can go cold at some point. So I don't think there's a special team. Philadelphia right now ahead of the pack, but I could easily see them losing to Dallas down the line. I could see them losing to Buffalo.
I know they've
been.
I know they've been humbled, but I know the other conference. I think Ravens can definitely be put in there.
Ravens are in that consideration, and so are the Dolphins that we'll get to here in a second, just based on record. But we saw the Dolphins have their flashes on the offensive side early in the season, the 70-point game against Denver. We saw San Francisco be dominant for a while. We've seen Dallas be dominant, but every single team has shown flaws. And I think if you've watched the Philadelphia Eagles play more than 1 or 2 games, you realize this is not a team that is firing on all cylinders. It's not what it was last year, and they're 9-1. Which is a scary thing if you're facing Philadelphia going forward, because maybe they do finally all connect. But at the same time, it only takes one bad week in the playoffs to get knocked out, and they could be in it. You never know. That's all I'm trying to say here. Next up, Dolphins 34-13 win over the New York Jets that just ended within about the last half hour. Big game from Tyreek Hill. Raheem Mostert salvaged a good performance late with a couple late touchdowns. The Jets offense looked like the Jets offense, although Garrett Wilson and the Jets did get a touchdown in this game, which is only the second offensive touchdown in the last about 50-something series. Dolphins, they did lose Jaleen Phillips to a very apparent Achilles tear. Same field as the Aaron Rodgers Achilles tear. We'll talk more about the field in my final thoughts.
Yeah, I heard on the broadcast. Anytime someone says Achilles, you just assume the word.
They showed it was a non-contact thing, and they showed the replay from the front, and you're like, I think I just saw the calf recoil, which basically in the calf, you'll see the muscle that's supposed to be here shoot up. Then they showed it from the back, and it was very clear that's what happened.
That ain't natural.
And honestly, you don't usually hear him say it's an Achilles injury on the broadcast. They said it on the broadcast. You could see it clear as day when it happened. He'll be out for the rest of the season, hopefully back for the start of next season. He was having a great year, but Injuries happen, and that again, that's not the first Achilles injury, and the Jets field has had a lot of injuries in the past. We'll talk more about it in final thoughts. But the Dolphins 34-13 win gets them to 8-3, pretty much puts the Jets out of their misery, at least in the divisional race. They're still in the hunt because they're only 2 or so games back, but with this offense, this defense is going to keep them competitive. But even today, they gave up 27 points to the offense. I think the Jets are done. I think that's not a surprise. But the Jets they don't have anything without Aaron Rodgers behind center.
Yeah, because this game, I think you just have to give most of the downs to Tim Boyle, because if you're wondering if absolutely anybody could be worse than Zach Wilson, the answer to that question, yeah, he is, and this is why he's a backup. So,
well, I'll say this: I didn't think he was worse than Zach Wilson. His interceptions were a tipped ball and a Hail Mary that got returned for a touchdown by Javon Holland in what they're calling the Hell Mary. But it's not like he made some critical mistakes. They just don't have a good offensive line. They didn't get anything going. But I don't think it was any worse than Zach Wilson. Zach Wilson's a career backup, I think, at best.
So what you're saying right now is this is a very small sample size of Tim Boyle, and we need to see some more.
And that's the other thing. 1 week of starting practice, not even a full week of starting practice. It's a bad team with a bad offensive line.
Weird day to play football.
Yeah,
weird time to play football.
I'm not saying he was.
Yeah, it's not a 1 o'clock start. It wasn't a 4 o'clock start. It was a 3 o'clock start.
3 o'clock on a Friday. That's
weird day.
Yeah. So I'm not saying I'm worried about the Jets or Tim Boyle. I think he was fine for what they had the opportunity to do, which is just throw somebody in the spot start. But he wasn't any worse than Zach Wilson. And if you're already on par with Zach Wilson, you've only had a half week of practice, maybe that's the best way to go and try and salvage the season. Because remember, Aaron Rodgers targeting right around Christmas to return. If they can win 3 of their next 4, which not a given, they do play Miami again in that stretch. If they can win 3 of the next 4, maybe they can make a run at 9-8 and sneak into the back end of the playoffs still. It's just looking very, very bleak. I don't think they're going to get it. I don't think Tim Boyle is that good, but I think he does give them the best chance unless they want to try Trevor Siemian, who might be better. With that, that's the recap portion of this one. So Joel and I both 3-1 because we had agreeing picks. Joel still has about an 11-game lead on me.
We thought the Lions were going to break the multi-year curse and actually, win on Turkey Day.
And they did not. So we're going to pick the 12 remaining games, no bye weeks this week. So we've done a recap. So let's go quickly into the games. We're trying to do this fairly fast because 12 more games and we're already 20 minutes in. First up, New Orleans at Atlanta. Sounds like Derek Carr's going to be back for the Saints. So Chris Olave takes a hit fantasy-wise. Alvin Kamara is your best bet here in your lineups. For Atlanta, you're going to play Bijan Robinson. You're going to play Drake London. And Taysom Hill at tight end, and even Kyle Pitts, Jonnu Smith have to be considered as well. Atlanta's much better home, but they are going back to Desmond Ridder, whether that's because of the Heineke hamstring injury lingering or they weren't satisfied with the play. Not
or
clear.
Arthur Smith can't make up his freaking mind.
Well, Heineke did get hurt in his last game, so that is part of it. But anyways, who gets the win here?
Yeah, is this one you're looking at Carr, of course, who has 20th ranked in average depth of target. New Orleans also just lost Michael Thomas for whatever that's worth this year. As I think Atlanta has a slight advantage. Atlanta's home record is arguably better than New Orleans' road record, but this game is a true toss-up. But I tend to think Atlanta has more weapons. Olave has been getting warmer, but that was mostly because of the switch at quarterback. Carr back, unless there's a switch, probably means Olave has an off game or might want to temper expectations. Tough game to figure out because both teams are streaky, but they're streaky as all heck, but I'm taking Atlanta.
Yeah, I'm taking Atlanta as well, just because Derek Carr is a quarterback that's going to limit this offense a little bit. Given I know Jameis Winston loves to turn the ball over, but he is much better for moving the ball.
The turnovers.
He's good at moving the ball down the field. He's just going to turn the ball over 2 or 3 times a game and hurt you in that way. But I think he gives you a better chance to score the rest of those drives.
We know that from his time in Tampa. Got to eat them W's.
But with Derek Carr in, I'm going to trust Atlanta at home. I think Ridder's only lost 1 home game in his career. I think he gets it done on Sunday. Next up, Pittsburgh at Cincinnati. This would have been a much more compelling game had Joe Burrow not been injured and knocked out for an extended period of time. He's going to be out the rest of the season with a tear in his throwing arm. Pittsburgh, I hate to say it, I think Jalen Warren's the better running back start, but Najee Harris is going to be in consideration. You're not going to play Kenny Pickett in this one, but you may have to do Pat Freiermuth with Deontay Johnson or George Pickens if you are desperate. For Cincinnati, I think the only sure play is Joe Mixon in this game. Obviously, you probably can't bench Jamar Chase, but you don't know what you're going to get with Browning. T. Higgins looks like he's going to be out for this one, so Tyler Boyd should be an option. And Tanner Hudson at the tight end position has been very good the last few weeks. Cincinnati on absolute life support for the playoff race. Obviously going to a backup quarterback. Not ideal. Pittsburgh right now the 7th seed, so who gets the win?
Pittsburgh 8-0 versus quarterbacks making their first career start. This could be a real serious crusher of hopes, dreams, and 23 destiny of the Bengals. Pittsburgh is 16-4 straight up in their last 20 games in Cincy, and because this is absolutely the first time you have heard this trivia all week, absolutely nobody else has mentioned this before. Pittsburgh firing Matt Canada was the first time since 1941 Pittsburgh has fired a coach in season. I know nobody has said absolutely anything about that entirely at all this entire week. Hashtag definite sarcasm. It is not because I trust the Steelers that I am picking them. It is because I have lost faith in the Bengals.
Yeah, I don't know what I'm getting from Browning, and I fully trust the Pittsburgh Steelers to have a similar dead cat bounce offensive performance like we saw with the Raiders after they got rid of McDaniels. I think it's just going to be one of those. Everybody is happy that the bad man is gone and Matt Canada. Najee Harris was very open about how frustrated this team is and how he is on how this offense was performing. So I think this is going to be a big weight off the offensive shoulders. This might be the first week that they actually outgained the opponent. And that's going to be partially due to the firing of Matt Canada and partially due to the start of Browning. I'm picking Pittsburgh as well. Next up, a game for first place in the AFC South. Jacksonville at 7-3. Houston at 6-4.
Who would have seen this coming?
Houston won the first game. So a win here, they would sweep the season series and tie, therefore be first place in the division. But a loss to Jacksonville puts them 2 back with just 5 games to play. So a big game for both sides. For Jacksonville, Trevor Lawrence had a big week last week. I don't know if you want to play him again, but you could try and ride that hot hand. Travis Etienne, Houston's not great against the run. This is a great matchup. Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones and Christian Kirk all in consideration at the wide receiver position. For Houston, CJ Stroud has been absolutely electric, but Tank Dell and Nico Collins, if they're both in the lineup, they've both been very good. Dalton Schultz as well. Evan Ingram for the Jaguars should be mentioned at tight end. And a little bit uncertain what that backfield is going to look like this week, so maybe avoid it at all costs. But if it's only Devin Singletary, I think you can play him in this matchup as well. Big matchup, big ramification. Who gets the job done?
As the Texans have won 6 of the 8 last games, both losses on the road. Both came on field goals as time expired. The Texans already housed the Jags and Jacksonville, 20 this year. Houston has won 10 of the last 11, 16 of the last 19, 21 of the last 26 games. Jags are 3-14 straight up in the last 17 divisional road games. Jacksonville's offensive line is just not good right now, particularly in the run blocking. We can see another Houston buzzer beater here, as it looked like the Jags were back last week, but yeah, that was against the Titans. I'm picking Houston.
I'm picking Houston as well. They've been much better at home. CJ Stroud had his worst game of his career last week, kept chucking and got the win. I think Jacksonville reverts offensively a little bit. I think Travis Etienne gets back on track, but I think at the end of the day, Houston just has this team's number. They had good success against Jacksonville when they were a real bad team for a couple years. I think they might have something on Jacksonville that's just going to get them over the hump. They get the win, and Houston, after week 12, could very well be first place in the AFC South, just like we all expected.
And we go to a uglier game.
This one's very interesting. Tampa Bay at Indianapolis. The Buccaneers with Baker Mayfield have been surprisingly decent on offense. Baker Mayfield actually a streaming option in this week's matchup because Indianapolis defense not great. You're going to play Mike Evans. Chris Godwin, though, has been a little bit on a milk carton, so play him at your own risk. Kate Otten, though, at tight
Agreed.
end has to at least be in the conversation. Rashad White lately has been great, so he's going to be in your lineup as
En
well.
fuego.
Yeah. Jonathan Taylor. He is back from the injury. He is back in shape. He's going to be full go. Tampa Bay has a good run defense, but should still be a good game for Jonathan Taylor and Michael Pittman and Joshua Downs because Tampa's pass defense has been horrific of late. All need to be in consideration. This game is in Indianapolis. I think this could be a loser's out. I don't think the winner gets in because Indianapolis is 5-5, but Tampa Bay 4-6. They really don't want to start falling too much further behind New Orleans, even though we both have them losing in the game against Atlanta. Who gets the win?
Yeah, I'm thinking a little crazy here that the Bucks have a good bounce back spot because why? Bucks are good against the run, and what's the only thing that the Colts do well right now? Ding, run the ball. Bucks have some winnable games going forward, but which Bucks team shows up? I actually have a little bit of confidence in Pewter Power this weekend. Can't believe I'm saying this. I'm picking the Bucks.
I am going to be taking the Indianapolis Colts in this one. This is a true toss-up game, in my opinion. It's part of just taking the home team. We've seen Gardner Minshew be very good at times and very bad at others. And I think against a pass funnel type of defense, I think this is going to be a good opportunity for the pass catchers of Pittman and Downs to get going. And that will, in turn, open up the running game. Indianapolis almost has to attack this pass first, run second, which is not their forte. But if they do it, which I think they will, they should get a very close win over Tampa Bay. This should be a very underrated game this week. But I think Tampa Bay falls just a little bit short here.
Disagreement.
First disagreement of the week, and it's only taken half the matchups. Next up, New England at the New York Giants. Well, I guess we need to talk about it. For the Patriots, you're going to start Ramondre Stevenson, end of list. For the Giants, you're going to start Saquon Barkley, end of list. Two bad teams. Although Danny DeVito, Tommy, Danny, don't call me Danny. I don't know what you want to call him now at this point because he had a good game last week. Looks like he's starting to figure out this NFL thing just a little bit. But New England off the bye, the Giants bad teams. Let's get this over with. Who do you got?
Actually put a little bit of thought and a little bit of thunking into this one because the New York Giant win versus Washington wasn't as good as the score. Washington had 6 turnovers.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Matt Jones is going to be the quarterback this week, even after all that. Well, everybody better be ready. So just everybody be ready. I'm like, okay, you're not going to put a tight end at quarterback, coach. I know you have a lot of Super Bowl rings. You're more than likely going into the Hall of Fame, but not for this year. But yeah, it's going to be probably Mac Jones, who has probably also lost this team, as we can't forget getting absolutely chewed out on the sideline when he was benched. I think that's pretty much etched in everybody's memory. Plus, don't forget New England's injuries on defense. Joe Dune, and yeah, New England's 31st in sack percentage without him as a defensive back. And you also have Christian Gonzalez, who is a front runner for Defensive Rookie of the Year, went down. So this is going to make DeVito look like Eli freaking Manning. I think the wrong team is favored here, and I could see this game definitely going the under. I don't think that's a stretch by any imagination. And I tell you, I originally had New England, but after looking at everything, I'm going, I can't believe it. I'm swinging the DeVito Kool-Aid, switching my pick, and Lord help me, I'm picking the Giants.
I'm picking the Giants as well. New England has 2 wins, both in division. They've beaten the Jets and they've beaten Buffalo. I think the Giants are going to come in with a little bit of confidence after winning last week. And frankly, I just don't have any confidence in New England offense. I have a little bit in the Giants. I think both defenses are fairly equal, so I'm going to take the Giants in this one in what should be a terrible game.
And
Next up,
hopefully they have cold water, no hot water after this game.
Well, no one's playing in Washington, so it seems likely. Next up, Carolina and Tennessee. Carolina, one-win team. Tennessee is a 3-win team. For the Panthers, you're going to play Adam Thielen, end of list. For the Titans, I hate to say you need to play Derrick Henry because he has been so poor of late, but this is a great matchup, and he is very good when the team has the lead. And against Carolina, you got to think they're at least not going to be getting blown out. They might not have the lead. They might not win the game. They're not going to be getting blown out by Carolina. You can also look at the way of DeAndre Hopkins.
Blown out by Carolina, you need to go to the XFL.
Yeah. You can look in the way of Miles Sanders, who's becoming more of a 50-50. He should be getting his job back. Overall, he's not been healthy most of the year. But all in all, it's really Thielen and Henry for fantasy options in this one. You could see a big game from Bryce Young or Will Levis, but that's not a life I want to live. I don't want to live that dangerously. So moving to the pick, Tennessee out of it with a loss. Carolina's long since been dead in the water. Who gets the win?
Yeah, you had all the talk. Tannehill was going to start, but it's going to be Levis. And if you look at the last 4 opponents for Tennessee, they all had a good run defense. I think that finally the Titans can run versus Carolina's defense. And if they can run, they should get the win here, as Tennessee is undefeated at home. It's hard imagining Carolina changing that, and I'm hoping and praying and picking Titans.
Yeah, I think this is a Derrick Henry get-right game. If it's a Derrick Henry get-right game, that means Tennessee is winning and probably in somewhat of decent control in this game. And by that measure, they have to win the game. So I'm going to take Tennessee.
Because it's crazy. All of Tennessee's losses have come on the road.
Yeah. Next up, the Los Angeles Rams go to Arizona to play the Cardinals. This is 2 bad teams, but Puka Nacua is going to be in your lineup. Kyron Williams coming back from injury. That is a big one here. Matthew Stafford is at least in streaming consideration. We'll wait and see about Cooper Kupp. Low ankle sprain, has a chance to play this week, but I think they're going to play it safe with him. For Arizona, James Conner. Keep an eye on Hollywood Brown's health. He has been out all week, but he's officially listed as questionable. Michael Wilson's already out, so could be a big week for Trey McBride. If Hollywood Brown plays, he's in your lineup, but outside of that, avoid the pass catchers. Arizona's looked much better with Kyler Murray back. They are 2-8. The Rams, not much better than them standings-wise. A divisional matchup. They know each other well. Who gets the win?
As Cards really have 0 home field advantage, but Rams are hobbling on offense right now. Kupp out again. And how about Kupp's curse for 23? Started by being out for a few games, finally got something going. Then Stafford gets injured, and now Stafford is back. Kupp is injured again. It's like, guy, criminy. So, yeah, just absolutely crazy. But why am I picking the Rams? Because Cards are underdogs at home. I know it's just 1.5 underdogs, but they're still underdogs once again. They have 0 home field advantage. Rams aren't favored that much, but are arguably the better team. Murray can't seem to find a connection with. I ain't calling him Hollywood lately with what he's let me down. In fantasy, I'm calling him Van Nuys. Brown, as they are struggling. I think Rams tend to eke out a very ugly win here. Williams at running back rushed for 158 yards and 1 TD in the first game versus the Cards. So I'm holding my nose, hoping for the best, and picking Rams.
I am taking Arizona in this one. I do think this is a true toss-up as well, but Kyler Murray and the Cardinals defense stood up against C.J. Stroud, made him look like a rookie for the first time since week 1 against Baltimore for C.J. Stroud. The offense has been more productive. They got to think James Conner's going to get better going forward. And I think Hollywood Brown does grit it out and play, and that's a big factor. I just don't trust this Rams team. They are getting Kyron Williams back. That's going to help. But I just think Arizona sneaks one out. Again, true toss-up. Wouldn't be surprised if it goes the other way, but I'm going to take Arizona in a very close win in the desert. Next up, Cleveland at the suddenly 500 Denver Broncos. Though Cleveland 7-3. Still trying to keep pace with Baltimore. Still trying to win that division. Still trying to make the playoffs. Denver, after a 1-5 start that involved a 70-20 loss to Miami, all of a sudden is back in the playoff picture at 5-5. Russell Wilson looks like he did Russell Wilson looks like he did a lot more in Seattle. Cortland Sutton has been an absolute heater for touchdown scoring in all but 2 games so far this season. And this defense that, again, gave up 70 and was getting torched for the first 6 weeks, they gave up like 34 to the Jets. They've been shutting down Pat Mahomes twice, Josh Allen, and then last week, the Minnesota Vikings, who have been a little bit of a Cinderella story with Joshua Dobbs. So Denver's defense has been much better. For fantasy, Cortland Sutton, I think, is about as far as you want to wade into the Denver waters. You may want to consider Javonte Williams. It's just a very tough matchup. For Cleveland, maybe Jerome Ford or David Njoku. Njoku had 15 targets. He's probably the best bet for the Cleveland offense, but I think this is going to be a very low-scoring defensive game. Cleveland starting Dorian Thompson-Robinson once again. Wasn't great against Pittsburgh, good enough to get the win. Denver, a team that's coming on very, very strong. Who do you got?
Nothing out of DTR makes him really seem excited, but you have another big running game out of Cleveland with this matchup, especially with just his limitations that we've seen from DTR in these very small sample size thus far. Denver defense is the worst tackling team in the NFL. They lead the league in missed tackles, but Denver, on the other flip side of the coin, has won 4 straight, 3 of them by 2 points or less. Denver has won the turnover battles 13-2 in those 4 games. Denver's last 4 games, 21, 24, 24, 19. Brown's first outing with DTR was a loss against the Steelers. A stunning win, of course, that was when Deshaun Watson was still under center, not DTR. I think Denver's crazy win streak continues here just because we're talking the caliber of quarterbacks.
Yeah, I'm taking Denver as well, mostly on that same argument. I think that Denver's defense, you mentioned a lot of missed tackles. I wonder how many, if you take out the first 4 weeks, especially that Miami game where it seemed like every play was a missed tackle, how they would be faring. Because if you look at their point differential, they're one of the worst teams in football. You look at their efficiency defensively, they're one of the worst teams in football. But you eliminate just that one game, they're middle of the pack to the upper end of things. And if you go back to what they've been the last 4 weeks, they've been one of the top 10 defenses in a lot of fields. So I think Denver's defense is going to step up. I think their offense is much better with Russell Wilson than Cleveland's going to be with DTR. And I think it's going to be enough to get another ugly win, similar to what happened on Monday night against the Vikings last week. Next up, Kansas City goes to Las Vegas. Kansas City's defense has been very, very good. So, Josh Jacobs is probably about the most you want to play. Devontae Adams are going to be in your lineup as well for the Las Vegas Raiders. For Kansas City, I'm not recommending a wide receiver.
Yeah.
Because we saw how that worked out last week. But Travis Kelce, even though he's contemplating retirement, is the number 1 option.
Doink. Sky Moore, is he even out there? Marquise Valdes-Scantling, doink. Oops,
if there's going to be a receiver, it's going to be Rashee Rice for the Kansas City Chiefs, but it's going to be Travis Kelce, Pat Mahomes, and Isaiah Pacheco in your fantasy lineups. Outside of that, good luck. Las Vegas has been very good the last 3 weeks. 2-1, did lose a close game to Miami, but only 20-13, had a chance to go down and tie that game, which is a lot better than a lot of people thought they would do. Kansas City has looked meh on offense. So this might not be the blowout game.
Accurate description.
That might not be the blowout game a lot of people would be expecting. Kansas City, they are 7-3. They are competing for that 1 seed overall, currently sitting behind Baltimore and Miami, who won today. Tiebreaker would go to Kansas City if those 2 teams tied Miami and Kansas City. But a big win here would move them back into that tie on the record. Las Vegas, though, a win here keeps them in that playoff race. Who gets it done?
You're looking at the Raiders, and definitely they impressed a lot. In the Miami game, you have so many disadvantages going into that game. This game could be a bad spot for Kansas City coming off Monday Night Football game, upset by the Eagles. Kansas City struggles to cover big numbers on the road. Schedule sets up really nice for them. They can't make the playoffs, talking, of course, about the Raiders, but they don't seem to know that, as the Raiders have the bye next week and then back-to-back potential winnable games. Las Vegas Raiders good at home, but Kansas City is very good on the road. They just like, hey, we'll just go into this house and we'll make this our house, and at least maybe for the first half anyway. As does the Las Vegas Raiders? This is the question, the key, absolute question. If anybody is considering, okay, do we take Las Vegas money line? Do we do a Vegas stack for DFS? How much are the Vegas fantasy assets going to help us this week? So here's the question: does the Las Vegas Raiders have enough of an offense to come back in the second half where KC usually, at least recently, has disappeared? The answer to that, I don't think so. I think it's no. Their only 30-point total was against the Giants, 21 points against the Pats, while KC has been over 20 points 6 times. Given their second half deficiencies, I still have to roll with the champs here.
Yeah, I'm taking Kansas City as well, but I think Las Vegas is going to be uncomfortably close in this one. I think the offense can get enough going, and the defense can shut down the Chiefs just enough to keep this game close. But I do think Kansas City sneaks one out and moves to that 8-3 mark and would tie them at the end of the day with most of the teams at the top of the AFC. Next up, Buffalo at Philadelphia. Buffalo 6-5.
Speaking of the Eagles,
6-5, coming off a big win against the Jets, but going to Philadelphia to play the 9-1 Eagles, then bye week, then Cowboys and Chiefs, not in that order for Buffalo. So they have to win one of these next three. If they lose the next three, get to 6-8, Miami will be 11-3. That division will be done before they get back to some easier matchups for Buffalo. So big game for both. You're going to play Josh Allen. You're going to play Stephon Diggs. You should be playing James Cook, even though it's a tough matchup, and Dalton Kincaid as well. For Philadelphia, A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, DeAndre Swift, and, of course, Jalen Hurts will be in your lineup as well. Philadelphia, 9-1, looking to run away with the best record in football. Buffalo just trying to stay above 500, stay in that AFC East race. A big game for both sides. Who gets this win?
When we're talking about Philly, I mentioned their luck earlier that they have been outgained the last 3 weeks by an average of over 100 yards per game. Kansas City marked the 5th time this season that an Eagles opponent has had the ball with a chance to go down and tie or win the game. They're 4-1 in those games, and it's crazy, crazy ways here. As a key, Buffalo is 2-5 in one-score games. Philly is 4-1. I got to roll with the Birds here. This has got the feeling of a trap game, but I think the Bills are the toast after that Monday night shocker. And yeah, Eagles may start to put the dagger in the Bills season, which is a story you don't want to see end because you're cheering for Josh Allen, you're cheering for the Bills, but
I want to see it end.
Yeah, unless you're sitting behind fans that are screaming, "We're back, we're back, we're back!" But yeah, I got to roll with the Birds here. I'm just not seeing a lot of hope from the Bills.
Honestly, the Bills have looked atrocious outside of last week's game against the Jets, but everybody kind of looks good against the Jets lately, so I don't want to put too much stock into that. Buffalo,
this afternoon's game, case in point.
Yeah, I mean, they didn't even play well, and they destroyed the Jets, the Dolphins, that is. I just think Philadelphia's too good of a team. I do think Philadelphia has not blown teams out or put them away, so Buffalo might hang around into the second half, but I do think at the end of the day, Philadelphia just has too much. You saw Philadelphia come back from a deficit of 10 points against Kansas City after halftime. Kansas City is a better team than Buffalo. I don't think Philadelphia puts himself in that position at home. And Buffalo goes into the bye at 6-6. Miami with the Washington next week could be very easily 9-3, and all of a sudden that division looks like it's gone. Buffalo's going to need this one, but I just don't think they get it. I think they're outclassed in this one, frankly. All right, next up, the Sunday Night Football game, Baltimore at the Los Angeles Chargers. Baltimore 8-3 entering the week, is the current number 1 seed in the conference. The Chargers, well, we're on Brandon Staley fire watch, but for whatever reason, it seems like the Chargers show up in these Monday night style primetime games. For the Ravens, of course, no Mark Andrews, so maybe Isaiah Likely is on the radar. Chargers defense is not great, but if you need a buy or you need to fill in for tight end, Isaiah likely could be an option for you. Don't get your hopes up. Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell are options in the backfield for Baltimore. Of course, you're going to be playing Zay Flowers, who should see an uptick in targets with the injury to Mark Andrews. And then, of course, Lamar Jackson will be in the lineup as well. For the Chargers, it is Eckler, Allen, and Herbert in your lineup. If you go much beyond that, you are just digging for scraps. Maybe Donald Parham gets a touchdown. Tight end is finicky, but it's not a smart money play. Big game for Baltimore to stay ahead of everybody in the conference. Of course, if they lose this game, they already know they will lose the number 1 seed because they will fall a half game behind Miami, who is also at 8-3 right now. The Chargers, though, they're well below 500. If they lose this game, they would go to 4-7, the same record as the New York Jets. And I don't think many people would say the Jets without Aaron Rodgers and the Chargers with Justin Herbert should have the same record. I think that's why Brandon Staley watch for getting fired is in effect. Again, the Chargers tend to show up in this big-time performance, big-time, prime-time setup. And for whatever reason, every time it feels like, oh, if the Chargers lose tonight, Brandon Staley's gone. They seem to find a way to take the win. They're not always playing a team like Baltimore in those situations, though. So who gets the win?
As Ravens right now are 5-0 against the spread on the road. They also lead the league in allowing only 7.8 points in the first half. On the Chargers, on the other hand, are 29th in the league in first half points allowed at home because we know they have a Swiss cheese defense pretty much. And Ravens better on both sides of the ball. Yeah, sorry, I know Justin Herbert's one of my quarterbacks in my 4 teams that are now probably all out of the fantasy playoffs. Wah. But yeah, sorry, Austin Eckler. But lethal defense, Ravens really better both sides of the ball. I'm picking Ravens.
Yeah, I'm taking the Ravens as well. I do think this might be the last game for Brandon Staley, which I don't think any of us are going to be upset about. Not by a long shot. So I think the Ravens are just too good of a team. I think
everybody has that twerking video burned into their subconscious.
You know that. But I mean, we've seen Baltimore just destroy teams like Detroit and better teams than the Chargers. I think they get it done. And frankly, the Chargers at home is kind of an away game, and the Ravens have a good following. So I expect this to be a very loud home environment for both teams, basically. Finally, Monday Night Football, Chicago at Minnesota. For Chicago, DJ Moore and Justin Fields and Cole Kmet definitely in your lineup. A lot of ambiguity in that backfield, whether it's going to be Herbert, Deonta Foreman, Rashawn Johnson, or some combination of all three. I don't think you want to wade into those waters. For Minnesota, Alexander Mattison and TJ Hawkinson for sure. Jordan Addison should be at least considered, especially with Justin Jefferson looking like he's going to miss his 3rd game. Worth noting, Vikings on bye next week. They do not have to activate Justin Jefferson. He should be back in week number 14. If he's not, he's on IR the rest of the way.
Don't complain to Justin Jefferson about your fantasy
and
team.
He does not care. He's like, my health is more important than your stupid team. Big game for both. I mean, obviously, Chicago probably better off losing for the draft pick, but of course for Eberflus and Justin Fields, whose futures with the Chicago Bears are up in the air. They want to get a win. Minnesota 6-4. They saw the Packers win. They know if they lose, they're only 1 game up on their division rival. So a big game for both in that respect. Who gets the win?
As Chicago's definitely been decimated with their defense for most of the season through the last couple of games. I think even though they've returned, temper expectations, as Chicago is truly one of the 2 or 3 underrated teams right now. Totally different Bears team, recent performances, aging well. This is their Super Bowl if you think about this Monday night matchup. It's Monday night against the divisional team. And Chicago is really not worried about their draft choices since they're going to have 2 high picks.
And they're going to have the number 1 from Carolina almost certainly.
Yeah, so they should get definite max motivation in the game there. And Dobbs will be patient, and I think that will ultimately be the undoing of Chicago because they have the 3rd worst expected points added for dropbacks on throws more than 3 seconds after the snap, and the 4th worst opponent passer rating. Fields is back. Vikings have been on a tear recently, beating the Bears, of course, at home, then 49ers, Packers at Lambeau, Falcons, and the Saints with a loss, of course, to the Broncos on Sunday Night Football in Week 11. I'm picking Vikings here as they have been doing decent without Double J. He's getting closer and closer to returning, and I think the Cinderella story continues, but you can't look past the Bears with Justin Fields slowly returning to optimum and getting more and more chemistry with Kmet and with DJ Moore.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Vikings as well. I think Joshua Dobbs can get more comfortable with the system. Denver's defense was a problem last weekend, and they still almost won that game. I think Chicago is a step down in competition. And even though Justin Fields and DJ Moore can get something going, we saw them give the game away against the Detroit Lions last week, even though the Detroit Lions tried to give them to them in the first place. And I think Minnesota's just too good to let that happen. If they're given the opportunity to win, they will take it, and they will hold on. All right, so that's our picks. Not a whole lot of differences this week. A lot of the games I feel like are straightforward. So let's go straight into final thoughts with Joe.
We've got final thoughts 1A and 1B. 1A is how bad is New England's offense this year? And the question to that is, of course, Deron Bland has as many touchdowns this season, 5, as all Patriot wide receivers combined. That's how bad New England's offense is this year.
Tyreek Hill has 10. So he's got double what New England has.
And final thoughts 1B. Did you take a drink every time you heard first ever Black Friday game this week? And the second part of my final thought question is, how was today's game considered meaningful, as that's how it was promoted? A Jets and Dolphins game, that is meaningful. And you're going, really? How?
It was meaningful for the Dolphins. I mean, they needed to win. I understand they expect this to be Aaron Rodgers. Again, it's hard to fault them for wanting this game, because if it would have been Aaron Rodgers, I think this is a great game. I really do. But unfortunately, it wasn't. Unfortunately, we didn't have Aaron Rodgers because of an Achilles injuries. We saw Jalen Phillips leave this game with an Achilles injury as well. We have to have somebody who can evaluate these fields for safety, for health, because we've seen certain fields, the one at MetLife being probably 1A, the one in Baltimore being up there as well. They have to be able to evaluate how come certain places breed more injuries than anywhere else. Yes, I know injuries can happen on any surface at any time to any player, but when you see Achilles snap after Achilles snap after Achilles snap on the same field in the same season, you have to start questioning what's going on. And the thing is, like the injury to Mark Andrews, it's because someone landed on his ankle. It doesn't matter if you're playing
they're looking into banning hip drops.
Yes. It doesn't matter if you're playing on pillows or you're playing on concrete or anywhere in between. That injury is going to occur. When it comes to the non-contact injuries we saw in the Super Bowl at SoFi, Odell Beckham tears ACL, non-contact injury. It seems to me like these turf fields are more dangerous than anything else, but there has to be someone that can look at the fields and go, what makes MetLife, what makes SoFi, what makes whatever stadium you want to look at more safe or more dangerous for these players? Because it seems to me the significant injuries keep hitting at the same stadiums. It might be different teams, but the same stadiums. It just seems that way for me for whatever reason. So there's got to be a way to evaluate the field safety, because it's becoming a problem when teams are losing some of their best players. The Jets lost their season 4 snaps in because Aaron Rodgers went down because of this field. So I think there's got to be a way to evaluate it and mandate teams make safer fields. If you're going to do all the work on padding and putting chips in the balls and all this analytics and helmet safety stuff, you got to look at what they're playing on as well, because that seems to be becoming a bigger and bigger problem. Anyways, that is our time for the Sports Shuffle. We will be back next week, more of a normal schedule, because, well, we're past the holiday, and week 13 will be here before you know it. I'm, of course, flying Ryan Go Christian along with
Tampa Motormouth, Joel Verlin.
And we'll be back next week for more sports goodness. And